Was poppin', was poppin', was poppin'. Welcome, Nicky and Moose. I'm Nicky. That's Moose. What's up, Moose?
What up, y'all?
And on this episode, we have, let me break this down for you, okay? Former NFL player, okay? Father, husband, all-around author, superstar, podcaster. I could keep going. I'm not going to tell you the name. Moose is going to tell you the name. Moose, who are we talking about?
Man, super humble guy. This guy has accomplished a lot of incredible things, but I'll tell you who it is. We're talking about Devon Steele, y'all.
Listen. We just going to get to it. Let's just get into this intro.
2 kids from Queens, cut from a different cloth. Now joining forces, helping you to elevate your personal brand. Yeah, I'm talking about Nicky and Moose, bringing you a never-before-seen perspective into the mindset, the mentality, the behaviors, the driving force, but more importantly, the stories behind the people and brands that you know and love the most.
So before we get into this episode, I got to tell you that this episode is powered by ECAMM Live, the #1 all-in-one streaming platform that allows you to stream now on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, everything, LinkedIn, all at once. Being able to do your podcast with audio isolations, everything from video with transitions to everything you need. You see Nicky and Moose, you see ECAMM. So if you want a free trial on us, 14 days, go to www.nickyandmoose.com /ECAMM for your free trial. And I got it right. You know what
I mean? Good job.
You know what I mean? But let's get into our guest of the day. First, let me say this. Can I say, I was like, I don't think he remembers, right? But we had, what conference it was? I don't remember what conference it was. Okay.
Take control.
Shout out to you who remembers this, okay? And so here I am with my this is before I had the camera, so I had the phone, right? So here I am with my phone, and I saw him, and I was like, yo, say something dope, right? And he said something dope next to his wife, and I was like, okay, let me fangirl him real quick. All right, I got it, E. I got it. He's like, yeah, that's my guy. I was like, I got it, E. So let me bring him on. Let me bring on Devon.
What's going on?
What's poppin'?
Not much. How y'all doing?
Can't complain. Look, I'm gonna let Moose start this off because I'll ramble.
Yeah, man. Listen, first off, and I think I told you before we jumped on, of course, we're excited to have you on, but this is probably going to be a really cool conversation because I don't know that, people who build successful brands often speak on them in the way that we hope to touch on this one. But before we get into all of that, man, for the people who might not know who you are, which is crazy, by the way.
3 people.
Yeah. I mean, that is crazy. It's like if you don't know who Devon Steele is, that's a problem. But let's just offer some grace, man. Tell us a quick background story on who Devon Steele is.
Yeah, man. So a lot of people know me from my playing days. I played college football at Penn State from 2007 to 2012. I was the team captain there. I became an All-American, the Big Ten Defensive Player of the Year. And in 2012, I got drafted 53rd overall to the Cincinnati Bengals, where I played there for 4 years. And a lot of people became aware of who I was and my family story when my daughter was diagnosed with stage 4 neuroblastoma in 2014. And I decided to use my platform as an NFL player to really raise awareness for families who were battling cancer in the hospital before we were even there, giving a voice to the voiceless. And then ever since then, we've just been on a mission to bring as much impact and value to the cancer community, as well as other people who are facing any type of struggles in their lives.
That's huge. That's huge. Now, I wanted to ask, like, that's a lot to deal with as far as putting that out to the public when it came to your daughter, right? Like, talk about, the transparency that you had to give. Like, was there some hesitancy? Like, yo, no, I need to hold this back, or no, this is for a bigger cause. We need to bring this awareness so all of our journey, I'm going to make sure is documented, because I I know that I don't know if everybody would take that route to be like, you know what, I'm gonna share this on social media. I'm gonna share this on news media and things like that. So talk about the transparency.
Yeah, one of the reasons why we decided to go public with the story was it was kind of in a selfish way, but it was meant to impact a lot more people. I understood the type of fight that we were about to go through. This is not something that you can do for yourself, but you have to find meaning and a purpose that really transcends the self and is about a larger group. So I knew by sharing our story and really being a champion of all those who are battling childhood cancer, there would be moments where, I wanted to give up because things became too hard, too tough. And if I was trying to champion for this community, then I couldn't send the message off to every other parent that's going through this, that it's okay to give up. So it was really in a selfish way that this was going to be my driving force to keep pushing in times that I knew I was going to want to throw in the towel. And just the way that we were able to impact that community is like we all fed off each other. I was giving them, inspiration and hope, and it was giving us purpose for our pain.
Mm. Man, it's incredible when you can rally behind a cause and make it about other people, and all of a sudden it starts to help you deal with the challenge, the trauma that comes with it, right? Because again, I can't only imagine what it is to have your one and only child at the time face something like that. And of course, you start thinking about not just her, but helping others as well. I want to ask you about that. At what point did you start to realize that you have something around the cause? Because everyone, when they think about a brand or a business, they often think products, service, their name and likeness. At what point did you realize that, wait, this can be something? This is a bigger cause that people will care to know about, and we can actually do something with it?
It was the first time I put up an Instagram post about what we were going through, and it got picked up by ESPN. And then we just started raising a ton of awareness. And then when I went back out to Cincinnati, because Leah was diagnosed in Philadelphia, they decided to put my jersey on sale and donate all the money to cancer research. And we raised like $1 million in the first week of selling the jersey. And that's when I realized that this was much bigger than me. This was much bigger than my family and football, but we really had a chance to impact people's lives.
Wow.
And how has she, I guess, come accustomed to the fame that she gotten through her journey? Like, is she like over it? Like, look, I'm good now. Like, I don't want to talk about this. Or is she like, yo, this is my life. I don't mind it. This is what I do. Because, I mean, she's a kid.
Right. No, she's definitely still an advocate. She loves doing things to really just give families hope. When we make visits to the hospital, just showing the kids that, I used to be in the bed just like you, but look at me now. And you have an opportunity to do that too. But also sometimes she likes to pull back because she was identified as the girl with cancer. And as she got older and she went into remission, she didn't want to be known as the girl with cancer anymore. So she was trying to find ways to really just show other people what she was about and her other gifts in this world.
That's dope.
Yeah, Devon, I want to talk about life after sports, especially for someone like yourself as a pro athlete. You have a lot of different options, but you made that the choice of where you want to dedicate your time and energy. And I'm sure it's expanded today. Of course, we're going to talk about the podcast here in a little bit, but can you talk about maybe some of the challenges that you dealt with when you were trying to transition from walking away from the NFL? That's a lot for some people.
It was tough. And one of the reasons why it was tough for me, and I think for a lot of professional athletes, is our identity is tied up in our sport. And when we can no longer play that sport, we feel like our lives don't have any value. Coming from the inner city, everybody always used to live by the saying, live fast, die young, because they didn't really feel like their life had any purpose. And the first time that I felt like my life had purpose is when all these college coaches started coming into the inner city and coming to my school, begging me to come play for them. Because before, when we was broke, we were struggling, nobody was coming to help us. And now all of a sudden I get good at football and they're like, come play at my school. And that was the first time I felt like my life really had value. And I tied my identity up in that. So when I made the decision in 2017 to walk away from the sport, it was like, man, where do I find value now? Because I think that everybody's looking for belongingness. We want to feel like we're adding value and we want to feel like we're being valued. And I didn't know how I was going to find that after sports. So I took a couple months off just thinking about what I wanted to do. Because I remember Miles Monroe once said that, you're born with certain gifts and sometimes you get put into a cage and that doesn't stop your ability to fly like a bird. It just limits it. And I think that football really limited to, what I thought about myself, what I believed my value was to this world. So in a sense, retiring was opening up that cage, but now I had to learn how to fly again. I had to find out what my true gift was and not just my talent. So that took a couple of months for me to do. And then, I decided to just dedicate my life to trying to impact people because I realized that I had a gift to motivate people. I had a gift to really touch the hearts and the souls of people. And I wanted to use that for good.
Who was some of your mentors or even just books that you read that helped you through that transition out of the NFL to have your own kind of identity? Because I think there are certain people, not just athletes, but just like military, going back into civilian world. And it's like, that's a culture shock. So who or what helped you through that?
It was tough because I went through a dark time because when Leah was going through cancer, there were a lot of people that didn't show up in the way I thought they would show up. Like perceived support means more to your well-being to actual support, because when you actually go through things and people are not showing up the way that you thought they would, it hurts. So I kind of like isolated myself because I didn't know who to trust. I didn't know who would really be there for me in a tough time. So when I made that transition from the NFL, I really relied on my family, and everything that I did was just through YouTube, learning. My last year in the NFL, when I signed with the Texans, before the season started, I had made a vision board that said I wanted to go back to school and get my MBA. And I ended up having a Liz Frank's surgery 2 weeks into the season. And my football season was done, and in my mind, I knew it was done. And I decided to act on what I put on my vision board. I went back to get my MBA because I remember when I was in college, I used to listen to E.T. a lot. And he was like, one of the reasons why he went back to school is because he needed to learn how to speak the language of the masses. So I wanted to go back to school because I knew I wanted to work with companies and speak about resilience and overcoming challenges. So I went back and I got my MBA in leadership. And then I just did a lot of self-development, reading every book that I could, reaching out to mentors, reaching out to people who can put me on the right path so I don't feel like I'm just keeping busy. Because, Denzel Washington said all movement into progress. So I wanted to reach out to people who can really put me on the right path. And I was lucky enough to be able to build up relationships in the NFL, because a lot of people think that the best thing that comes from the NFL is the money. And it's really not true. It's your access to certain people. And when you take advantage of that access and you build relationships, whether the money dries out, if your career don't go the way you want it to, you can rely on those relationships to help create new avenues for you. So it was a lot of people that really poured into me.
So good.
Yeah, I don't know that everyone knows this, but I think you are on the intro of one of the mixtapes. Am I right about that? I think so. In one of the mixtapes, it's your voice where I think you're introducing Ian. You're talking about, was it overcoming a broken leg or something like that?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think it was from when I went back to visit my high school, because when I had made it to the NFL, I had went back to my high school to speak, and E just happened to be there. And I had knew E because my senior year in college, I just started going on YouTube and I was listening to all the motivational stuff. I had never did it before that year, but I was listening to Ray Lewis. I was listening to E.T. every night and before games. And I don't know, it just gave me a different perspective, right? Going into that last year is your last chance to really make things happen and make it to the NFL. So when I went back and I walked into the cafeteria, he was sitting there and I'm like, yo, what are you doing here? Like, I just saw you on Thank God It's Monday, and now you're sitting inside the cafeteria. And he was like, yo, I want you to come up on the stage with me and speak. So we did that, and we were able to build a relationship from there.
Dope. Okay, so what does it look like after the NFL? Like, what was what was the first thing that you did on a positive note where it was like, okay, this is going to be my brand. This is what people are going to know about me after the NFL, after baby girl got, just cured from cancer and everything. Now it's like, okay, now what? What was that first thing that you're like, this is it?
Authenticity, realness, because I think that's what made our story stand out when Leah was battling cancer, because we weren't the first NFL player or sports or athlete to go through this type of battle. But for some reason, it just really connected with the hearts and minds of people all over the world. And I realized it because people got a chance to really see the authentic relationship between a father and a daughter. It helped bring an athlete, because sometimes we put athletes up on pedestals like they're warriors and nothing really bothers them, that because they're making a certain amount of money, they don't experience certain things in life. And people were able to see, like, we're just like everybody else. And that authenticity, I think, really connected with people. So I told myself that when I walked away from football, that I was going to build a brand based off of honesty and authenticity.
That's so good.
Yeah, I want to talk about the business for a little bit, right? Especially behind what may feel like an uncomfortable conversation for some, because, of course, you built your brand around a phenomenal cause, right? And it's standing up for cancer in a sense. But at the end of the day, you do need money, whether it's to bring back money to those who in need, just the medication and the resources for something like that. It's not cheap. So can you talk about how you maybe navigated that world of understanding you need to raise money, or there needs to be an element of a business, especially even though it's something that is for a good cause? You're not necessarily pocketing that money, but you need the resources. How did you navigate that opportunity there, or just that concept overall?
Yeah, so I looked at it as, as soon as the news broke that Leah had cancer, people kept asking me, do you have a foundation that we want to donate to, that we want to support? And I didn't want to just launch any type of nonprofit, because nonprofits are here today, gone tomorrow. I needed to find a problem within the cancer community, because to me, that's really just an opportunity to really have an impact. And the more research I did, the more I spoke to other parents who was battling cancer, I realized that, parents who are going through this, they lose 40% of their annual household income due to cancer treatment work-related disruption. And I experienced that firsthand. I came out of college, I signed a $4 million contract. Leah got diagnosed my second year in the NFL. And then that contract got ripped up, and I was paying for $600,000 that year. So it was like all that money that was guaranteed to me was now gone. So I understood the financial struggles of that. And then I realized that, bankruptcy rates in households with childhood cancer are 260% higher than similar households without cancer. So I'm like, a lot of times we put so much focus and money into cancer research where there's an immediate need for families right now. Like, y'all trying to find a cure 5 years from now, families are trying to find a way to make it through tomorrow. So I realized that we had to do something to impact that part of the battle with cancer. So we started a nonprofit called the Still Strong Foundation, where we financially assist families who are battling cancer with household bills such as mortgages, car payments, groceries, gas, whatever we could really do to keep, families, take that financial burden off of families. And then we just use social media. We used our media contacts to push the story out to people, to really pull at people's heartstrings, because people hold on to money unless you can find a way to just get them energized from their hearts and from their minds and their souls. And we just leaned on those relationships to build up our first nonprofit, which is a business in a sense. You just call it a nonprofit.
Cool.
Wow. There's a lot under that one for sure.
I was about to say, I feel like you have a follow-up. You want to go?
Yeah.
Go.
No, there's a lot to that. And I love that you kind of just spoke to it, because, again, I think a lot of us think about business as only one way. But even in the way a nonprofit is traditionally set up, the people who are organizing the nonprofit or taking care of the day-to-day, they get compensated. You need to be compensated for the work that you're doing under that. Can you just kind of talk about that for those out there who want to build a brand? They maybe believe in a cause, but they're saying, no, there's no money in that, so I'm not going to do it. And they're almost, like you said, silencing their purpose in a sense because of the day-to-day responsibilities that they have, but you obviously figured out. Can you maybe just expand on that a little bit for those who might not know?
Yeah, I think Wallow said it best. It's money everywhere. There's money in everything if you really add value to it, because that's what people pay you for. That's what people give you money for, is the amount of value you add to the world. So for us, when you're trying to build something out and you don't really have the money, you have to find people who believe in your vision. And then you just give them everything else that's not monetary, to pay them for the services that they're doing for you. And then once you get to a point where you're able to pay people, then you start to pay them. But at first, you just have to start off with people who understand the vision. They can see where this has the capability of going, and they actually believe in it. And they're going to work just as hard as they was getting paid a 6-figure salary. And then once y'all do reach a certain level, then you compensate them for the work that they put in for you.
Mm. Good moves. Good.
No, that's. I was like,
I know
yeah,
when it gets business talk, you're
though.
like, yo, hold on, let's stay right here. I ain't mad at it. Okay, so your wife. Shout out to your wife. You have a podcast, and like when I say, if y'all look at their Instagram, it's like relationship goals like everywhere. You're gonna want to put that on your vision board. How they rock everything from their wedding to their anniversaries. It's always fire, right? How did she feel, and how did you guys maneuver around even before the podcast, just being transparent about your relationship? I know between you and your daughter, there was already like, this is what we're going to do. But did your wife be like, well, hold on, I didn't sign up for this transparency. Like, I still want you to myself. I love you. We don't have to do everything. Like, how did she feel about this journey? How did the podcast come about? Because y'all have some real conversations. Hence the podcast name is Real Relationships Podcast. Like, let's talk about it.
Yeah, my wife is an introvert. Like I come from sports, so I had to be in the camera my whole career. So I was used to it. I knew how to maneuver in that area. But for her, it took a while to do it. And I basically just had to teach her that, when I first started talking in public, I was terrible. When I first started doing interviews, if you look back at my interviews in college, like my freshman and sophomore year, they were awful. I really didn't know how to speak to people, but I didn't allow that to stop me from really honing my gift and learning how to communicate with others. I know for the podcast, the reason why we started the podcast and was really open about our ups and our downs is, I think it was before the pandemic. I was sitting around and I was scrolling on social media, and I had saw that this big influencer couple had got a divorce, or was getting a divorce, and I was reading their comments, and everybody was just disappointed. They're like, man, y'all were coming on your podcast and your Instagram, and y'all were talking about how great your relationship was, and I was just like, wow, that's a huge problem. But like I said earlier, it's an opportunity. I was like, people are not expecting them to be perfect, because I saw a lot of comments say, we wish you just would have told us you were going through it so that we can navigate those struggles together, because here I am going through this tough time in my relationship. And I'm like, well, why can't we be like them? Whereas if you would have said, hey, this is what we're going through right now, and this is what we're doing to try to fix it. So I looked at my wife and I was like, yo, we need to start a podcast where we're just authentic. We talk about the real struggles in relationships so people know that they're not alone. And then we just do our research to find out what kind of interventions people can do to really overcome those challenges. From the first episode we put out, people just loved it. So I was like, yo, this is something we have here. Like, we're all about being authentic. We're all about being honest. So let's just call it the real relationship, and we're going to bring the real back to relationship. And she was on board because I think the first couple of episodes, I was like, yo, I need to talk about when I cheated. And she was like, yo, you want to talk about that already? Right. I was like, what if people start looking at you crazy? I was like, I don't care. Like, this is real life stuff. I was playing in the NFL. Like, I played D1 football. These are real life things that people go through. This is when I was young, but I grew older. So instead of trying to seem like I'm this perfect man or we're this perfect couple, let's show people what we went through and how we were able to overcome it. And, when we had that conversation, she was like, all right, let's do it. And again, people loved that episode because it was something they weren't getting from other couples. Like, it was real stuff that people could relate to. And we were able to show them how we were able to overcome that to have the type of marriage we have now.
Man, it's crazy because I'm a big believer in, at some point, everything that you try to hide is what you make public. And people are like, oh, in a way I knew, but now I really like what you're doing because it humanizes you to everybody else. They understand exactly what you're saying. You're not perfect. But was there something that you did to maybe prepare, I don't know if it's the audience or the brand, because here you are for a long period dedicated to a cause and pushing that as the primary thing that you're about. Then you transition almost into something completely separate when you go into talking about relationships. Was there something that you had to do to prep your audience or even yourself and say, all right, let me do this and not necessarily worry about what I did previously? Because that's almost another level of, your career, you would say.
No, because I think that the foundation was already being laid without us knowing, from us being public with our wedding, us being public with interviews. Like, people already had an inside look into our relationship. So to build something like a podcast based off of relationships was just natural. Me and my wife actually talked about how we probably should have did it earlier, because we had the not dream wedding for our relationship. We got married in the New York Public Library on some Sex in the City type of stuff. And we was at every Fashion Week, New York Fashion Week, picking out different dressings. We were like, man, we should have just pulled out our phone and just vlogged this type of stuff to give people an inside look of what this is like, because we knew it would have blew up right off the bat. But in a sense, I'm glad we didn't, because we were actually able to be fully present in that moment, because we had been through so much the prior year with Leah battling cancer that we just needed to keep something close to ourselves. But it was like it was already building up for us to do something like this.
All right, let me get in my Moose bag real quick. So Moose, prepare to do another layup on this one. So now you go from, hey, boo, we're in a relationship, we're married and everything, to, hey, we're starting a podcast and we got to make money off of this. So now we're business partners, right? So talk about like that transition of, how are you taking this podcast with your wife into something that's a complete brand that's bringing in brand deals, sponsorships? And I know you had before launched a Patreon and things like that. Like, break down the different ways you guys are making money together, and how's that relationship with, husband and wife as, business partners? Because like, do y'all argue about money when it's like, yo, hold on, you didn't take this deal? Like, yo, wait, I didn't mean to. Like, hold on.
Right. No, so we never argued about money. I think for us, the first thing we did when we decided to make this into a business, because at first we was just going to do it for fun, is we made a pact that our marriage comes before the business. So if we're struggling in our marriage, we're not going to pick up the microphone and act like everything's good. We're not going to keep forcing ourselves to put out podcasts. Like, this is our number one goal, is to have a successful marriage and raise amazing kids who really flourish when they grow older. And if anything comes in between that, then we got to cut that off. So for us, when we decided to make it a business, we just understood the roles that we were going to have. Just like you would do that in a marriage, you're going to do it in a business. You understand what you're responsible for, and do you do everything you can to fulfill that obligation, and then you support your partner whenever you can. And then for us, we really didn't start taking money until we were 2-3 years in, because I think sometimes people they try too fast to start making money off their gift when they should just be putting it out for free. It's like Frank Lucas. He didn't just put out Blue Magic and start charging people. He started giving it to their customers and giving them a taste so that they can spread the word and come back to pay for it. So for us, it was just push out as much content as possible to give people value. And then when the time is right, then we'll start asking for the money. Then we'll start putting out courses for people, because they're like, man, they're giving us so much for free. I wonder what they're going to give us once you start charging for things. So that's what we're in the process of doing right now, because I didn't want to take money. When I first started learning about the podcast game, I think it was Tim Ferriss, and when he was like, don't start taking money until you get 50,000 downloads per episode, because then you can really start hitting companies in the head and making a lot of money. So I had told my wife at first, I'm like, yo, we can't take money. We just gonna have to ride this out. We're gonna continue to put out content. And then when we start to reach those numbers, then we're going to start to reach out to people and start, selling them spots, because we've had a lot of companies reach out to us that we just turned down because we didn't hit our number yet. But when we do, we're going to come back to y'all and we're going to get paid the right amount for our influence.
Oh,
that's big.
Oof.
That's big.
Oof.
Hey, I wanted to ask, and I'm wondering, like, if there's ever a time where y'all got on a podcast and almost like cleaned up something that had went wrong, right? Like previously, it's like as you're trying to fix the marriage, it's like, oh, let's use this as an outlet, because one of the things that I've realized about podcasting is, I don't want to say it's therapy, but man, it is a form that can really help you solve or work through a lot of challenges that you might be going through. And it feels weird because it's you, a microphone, and a camera, but before you know it, there is some growth and change and transformation that's happening just by having an outlet to really work something out of.
Yeah, so for us, we haven't had to go back and edit any of our episodes because we do a good job of sitting down and talking and understanding what each person is comfortable with sharing with the world, so that we don't really step on each other's toes. We don't put each other in uncomfortable positions. But sometimes when we're having discussions, it may go a way that we didn't think it was going to go. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. If, let's just say that if we did break out into some type of disagreement on our episode, we would just show people how you walk through a disagreement. Like, we don't want to show people that happy couples never argue. We want to show them that happy couples argue the right way. So if we're having a disagreement on our podcast, we're just going to show people how you can navigate through those disagreements and still be able to love each other and not feel like you just tried to amputate each other in order to win the disagreement or the argument.
Okay, let me get in my bag real quick. So your Instagram, right? You may have waited from a podcast standpoint to get paid, but I do be seeing some of these little sponsored joints on the Instagram, whether, we talking about certain baby brands, whatever, because, the pregnancy journey and things like that. How do you maneuver around saying yes, saying no when it comes to your social media?
Yeah, that's why I can say no to the podcast, because we make enough money off of Instagram and social media.
Talk about it. Talk about it.
I can definitely turn down the deals with the podcast until it reached the level that I wanted to reach or that we wanted to reach. But as far as brand deals, when it comes to social media, I've done a great job of just honing in on my audience. I've had to reinvent myself constantly over social media. Like, if people scroll back to see where I started from, I had to find my space. Because, when you're just starting this thing out, it's like you're trying everything that everybody else is doing. And then you're paying attention to your analytics and you're seeing what really resonates with your audience. And I did that in the parenting space and just being a husband and being a father. And I'm like, yo, this is what I'm going to build my brand off. And when other brands are seeing that, they're putting more money into influencers instead of radio ads, because people don't listen to the radio. People are not watching TV anymore. So they got to find a way to still reach their audiences. And, even with that, I still turn down a lot of deals when it comes to my social media that be worth a lot of money, for instance, because I have certain values that I'm not really willing to cross in order to make money. It was the same reason why I was able to make the decision to walk away from football, to be there for my family and for my daughters, because I understood my values. Because when I was in college, I think there was an interview with Dave Chappelle and Oprah when he walked away from the 50 million. And she was like, if you don't know who you are before the money and fame comes, then you'll never know who you are. And I made it a point during that time to really find out what I valued as a man. So two things that I never promote on, my social media, just because I have a lot of people within the cancer community following me who are going through challenging times, and I have kids who are following me, is I don't promote alcohol and I don't promote gambling. And if that's something that you want to do, that's cool for you to do. I'm not going to sit up here and act like I'm perfect, like I don't have a drink every now and again. But because I understand that I have parents who are battling cancer and sometimes they find negative ways to cope with their pain, I don't want to push alcohol for something that they ended up trying and they like, and they're like, well, this is what I'm going to go through when I'm having a tough time, with my kid battling cancer. Or I don't want to influence that kid who may be following me, who don't have the brain development to understand the decisions that he's really making in his life, to try something and he gets hooked on it because I put that out on my platform. So I'm very meticulous about the companies I align with. And as long as they align with my values, then I'll be willing to share that with my audience.
Yeah, that's good. Any do's and don'ts for people navigating brand sponsorships? I mean, I know you just called out a couple, and that's major, the one around the values. But for anybody out there who is starting to get in that level where they're starting to get brands reaching out to them, just navigating the business talk and stuff like that, any do's and don'ts that you would share from your experience?
Yeah, the first thing would just be to understand your worth, because life is all about negotiations. And if you don't understand your worth, somebody else is going to tell you what that is. But you have to be realistic with what it is. Like, don't put yourself up here when you're not really there yet. You haven't made to that level. Like, start where you're at and start to work your way up and learn how to negotiate with these companies. Because a lot of them, like even with me, I have agents that I work with. So sometimes there will be companies that reach out to me and I'll just send them to my agents. But some companies want to work with the influencer directly because I guess that they'll have a chance in order to work a better deal. But set your price point, and if they don't like it, stick with it, because you understand some deals are not going to go through because they're going to try to devalue you, right? There was one where I had somebody, a company had asked me to post one time, and they had paid me like $20,000, right? And they ask you for access to your Facebook so that they can start to promote it to audience that are like yours. And I had saw after we had finished our contract, they spent like $500,000 in order to market me. And I'm like, hold on, I don't think I'm charging enough, because if you think,
Right.
you know, you're willing to spend $500,000 to put my face out to a certain audience, then my likeness is definitely worth way more money than I thought it was. So I think just by doing your due diligence, understanding your worth, understanding what, if they're willing to pay you a certain amount of money, they're trying to make 10-fold, 20-fold off of you. So just being able to learn how to negotiate is important.
A negotiate word. So serious. So serious. So I have and Moose, I want to kind of do this every time we got an interview. I got a random question, right? But it always changes. So what is your definition of success? I think everybody has their own different vibe with it. And so for you, what does success look like? And have you met it?
Oh, me? No, not at all. I haven't reached.
Not at all.
No, I haven't reached. I have experienced success in my life, but I wouldn't say that I'm successful yet. And I think success is really what you're able to accomplish based off of what you were put here to accomplish. And I think that's the simplest thing. It's not based off of what you see other people do, because that's really competition, but it's what you are capable of doing, and if you're able to reach that. And for me, I say that I haven't reached that yet. When you asked that question, it reminded me of, I had went and spoke at a panel at an event, and it was like with 5 other people. And at the end of the event, somebody from the audience got up and it was like, can each of you talk about the moment you realized that you were operating in your greatness and you were successful? And I was on the right side of the panel, and I told them to start on the left side of the panel because I didn't want to be the first one to talk. I like to process my thoughts before I speak. And I just started to listen to the other 4 panelists talk about how, you know, they was operating in their greatness in the moment that they knew it. And there's no shade against them, but I think sometimes we minimize what greatness truly means and what success truly means. Like I know, when you walk into a room, you know when there's greatness in there, right? You know when there's an E.T. in there. You know when there's a Serena Williams, a Michael Jordan, right? A Maya Angelou. Like, you know when you're in a room full of greatness, and it's not going to be often that you're in the room full of people who are just great, who have mastered their craft and reached the top pinnacle. So I was listening to all of them talk, and when they passed the mic to me, I looked at the crowd and I was like, I haven't started operating in my greatness yet, but y'all will know when I do. And the panelists looked at me like, oh, like, darn, I should have said that, because now I'm not fully there yet, but I felt like I had to say that to these people because I'm on the panel and they want to hear certain things from me. But I think it's dangerous when you feel like you have already become successful and you feel like you're already operating in your greatness, that you pull back some. But I still have a lot more that I can accomplish. And as long as I'm real with myself, I'm going to eventually make it there. But I just have to take it in stride, and I have to be able to celebrate the small victories on the road to greatness.
Such a fire.
Wow. Wow.
See?
Yeah, man, you kind of stumped me with that. I don't know that I have any follow-up questions after that. Sheesh, it kind of put me on my heels. That was incredible. No, man, but I do want to just take a moment and say thank you. To be honest with you, it's rare that you come across someone who, against society standards, has accomplished a lot, but is humble, is driven, is focused, and is still working after other ways or looking for other ways to become better. I know you're currently pursuing an advanced degree now, again, in addition to...
I'm done now. No, I'm done.
Hey.
I graduated in May. I'm done.
No more. Forget that. So, all right. So, you know what I'm saying? But again, it just goes to show, like, constantly still working. So for that, man, just wanted to say thank you. Thanks for setting a great example. Thanks for, of course, being open and sharing this conversation with us here. This was dope, man. This was a deep convo. Like, low key, this was pretty deep. I'm not gonna lie.
Like that. Yeah. I got one more question. One more. 3 books. 3 books that has helped you with branding and business. 3 books.
Branding and business.
Yep.
Let me look at my shelf, because I got these books are not just for look.
Listen, that's why I had to say it. I was like, oh, he got books. So let's talk about it. You know what I mean?
The first one would be Soar by T.D. Jakes. I think it teaches a lot of great principles about business, about how you hone in on your gift and you really just take it to the next level. So I would definitely recommend that. The second book will be Think and Grow Rich, because I think that a lot that has to do with business has to do with personal development. And if you don't really understand money, then you're not going to be able to make money. And if you do make money, then you're going to spend money too fast, and which is not going to be sustainable. So I would definitely start with those 2 books. And then final one. The Effective Executive. I think is really important, because anytime that you get in business, if you're really trying to scale it at a certain level, you have to be able to learn how to manage people. If you're not able to manage people, if you're not able to get people to believe in one common vision for your business and for your company, then somebody can derail it because they don't have the same value. So I think the effective executive will teach people how to be able to manage people properly.
That's so good. That's so good. Hopefully y'all wrote that down. Look, just like how Moose said, we appreciate that you spend the time here, opened up about the brand side, the business side, because that doesn't necessarily get talked a lot about when it comes to influencers and things like that. But normally Moose does the final words, but since you are the guest, tell the people where they can find you, and then, of course, final words for the people.
Yeah, so they can find me on Instagram at Still in the Game or Real Relationships Podcast, or you can visit my website at devonstill.com. And if it was the final words that I would leave for people is don't become a prisoner of your past. There's a lot of, like I said earlier, there's sometimes I allowed football to put me into a cage, and I didn't really understand my potential. Specifically in undergrad, I had, graduated from Penn State with a 2.0. I did the bare minimum, but as I got older, I got wiser, and I really challenged myself, and I went back to school to get my MBA, and I graduated with my MBA with a 3.4. Then I went back to school again at Ivy League at UPenn to get my graduate in positive psychology, and I almost graduated with a 4.0, and I was only able to do that because I never allowed myself to become a prisoner in the past. And I used to always tell my daughter, because she's in advanced math right now, and she's scared to death of math, and she's scared of failure. And I will always try to tell her that I don't think that people are really scared of failing. They're afraid of what failure means to them, because we make up stories in our mind about what it means, when failure should not be about the person, but it should be about the process. So if you failed in your life before, then that doesn't make you a failure. That means you have to look back over the process in which you took and learn how to adjust that process so that you can reach a level of success.